The road was quiet, the air thick with a lingering tension that only late nights could bring. The soft hum of passing cars barely disturbed the eerie silence of the Birmingham highway. It was lucky too late for most people to be out, unless they had somewhere they absolutely needed to be. A sleek black SUV cut through the darkness, driven by a black man in his late 30s. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes sharp as they traced the road ahead. He had been in this situation before, stopped, questioned, scrutinized. It was nothing new. He told himself to stay calm, but this time, something felt different. Flashing red and blue lights pierced the night. A police cruiser slid in behind him, its siren wailing just once, just enough to send a message. Exhaling slowly, he signaled, eased off the gas, and pulled onto the shoulder. Every movement was calculated, every action by the book. He knew the rules, knew them better than most. Inside the cruiser, Officers Clayton and Reynolds exchanged a knowing glance. "He fits the description," Reynolds muttered, reaching for his radio. Clayton smirked. "Doesn't matter. Let's see what we find." They stepped out of the car, moving slowly, deliberately. One of them tapped his flashlight against his palm before aiming it straight at the driver's window. A man inside didn't flinch. He rolled it down, both hands resting on the wheel where they could be seen. "Evening, officers. What's the problem?" Clayton leaned in, his expression unreadable. "License and registration." His tone was flat, but his eyes carried something else, an assumption, a judgment already made. The man moved carefully, reaching toward the glove compartment. "Mind if I—" Slowly, Reynolds interrupted, his hand resting on his holster. The SUV's interior light flicked on as the man pulled out his documents and handed them over without a word. Clayton studied the license. "Where you headed this late?" "Oh." Reynolds' flashlight swept across the passenger seat, then the back, "Driving kinda fast back there." That was a lie. He had been going exactly the speed limit. He knew it. They knew it. But he didn't argue. He just listened, watched, waited. Clayton took a step back, clicking his tongue, mind stepping out of the vehicle. A slight shift in the man's eyes. "Is there a reason for that?" Reynolds' hand tightened on his holster. "You resisting?" "Si." He had been here before, but he had no idea just how bad this was about to get. Something was off. They weren't just looking for a reason to write a ticket. They were looking for something more. The night air clung to his skin as he stepped out of the SUV, hands visible, shoulders squared. He had faced worse situations. He told himself to breathe. Clayton circled him like a predator sizing up his prey. Reynolds stayed by the open driver's door, eyes scanning the interior, searching for something. "Got anything illegal in the car?" Clayton asked, his voice laced with artificial politeness. "No." "You sure?" "I'm sure." Reynolds chuckled under his breath. "Mind if we take a look?" And there it was, the trap. The men knew the game. If he said no, they'd make something up. If he said yes, they'd find something that wasn't there before. "I don't consent to searches." Clayton clicked his tongue. "See, that's interesting, 'cause we got probable cause." Reynolds leaned into the car, reaching under the driver's seat. His body blocked the view, but the man didn't miss the slight jerk of his arm where his elbow moved, tucking something into place. Then Reynolds pulled back, holding a small bag of white powder between his fingers, his face lighting up like he had just won the lottery. Well, what do we have here?" The man's pulse quickened from fear, but from cold, calculated rage. He knew exactly what had just happened, and they had no idea who they had just done this to. Clayton grinned. "Looks like we got ourselves a little problem." Reynolds yanked his arms behind him, snapping the cuffs onto tight. "You have the right to remain silent," he started, but his voice carried no weight, no sincerity, just procedure, just routine. The man clenched his jaw as they pushed him against the hood of his SUV. He had been trained for moments like this. He could disarm them both in seconds. But not yet, not now. As they shoved him into the back of the squad car, the cold steel of the cuffs biting into his wrists. He stared straight ahead, silent, controlled. Outside, Clayton and Reynolds shared a quiet laugh. "Guy thought he was slick," Reynolds muttered. Clayton snorted. "Yeah, well, he's gonna learn real fast how things work around here." They thought this was just another routine stop, another black man who wouldn't be believed, another case that would fly under the radar. They couldn't have been more wrong. As the car pulled away, the man watched the city lights flicker against the window. He could end this with one phone call, but he wouldn't. Not yet. Because the real fight was just beginning. The station reeked of sweat, cheap coffee, and something stale, like old paperwork left to rot under the weight of a broken system. His Saturday in the interrogation room, wrists aching from the cuffs that had only just been removed. The two-way mirror reflected a steady expression back at him. Calm, patient, a man who knew more than he let on. Clayton and Reynolds stood on the other side of the glass, watching. "He's too calm," Reynolds muttered. "Yeah, like he knows something we don't," Clayton replied. "Let's shake him up." The door creaked open, and Detective Malone stepped in, older, seasoned, with a sharp gaze that had seen everything. He dropped a manila folder on the table and took a seat across from the suspect. "You know what this is?" Malone tapped the folder. The man didn't answer. Malone opened it, pulling out crime scene photos, drugs, cash, weapons all tied to a supposed operation the man had never been a part of. He slipped one photo across the table. "That's you, right?" He glanced at it, a grainy, doctored image. "Amateur work?" He smirked. "You tell me." Malone leaned forward. "You're looking at 20 years minimum, unless you want to make a deal." He met Malone's gaze, unflinching. "No deal." Malone sighed. "Suit yourself." He stood up and knocked twice on the door. The real game was about to begin. The cold steel bars of the holding cell barely rattled when he gripped them, his mind working through the maze they had trapped him in. Outside, the precinct hummed with its usual late-night routing, phones ringing, officers muttering, footsteps echoing against worn tile floors. But he wasn't just another name in a file. He had spent years understanding systems like this, and he knew how to dismantle them. His eyes flickered toward the small, wall-mounted clock. If they followed protocol, he had another hour before the public defender arrived at a defender he had no intention of using. Instead, he had sent a message the moment they booked him, using the only favor he ever vowed to call in. And right on time, it happened. The commotion started at the front desk, sharp voices cutting through the low murmur of the station. Officer Clayton barely had time to lean against the wall before the door slammed open, revealing a sharply dressed woman in a navy blue suit, her heels clicking like a judge's gavel against the floor. Her presence alone was enough to shift the balance in the room. Olivia Carter, federal attorney, specialist in corruption cases, and more importantly, the only person alive who knew his true history. Reynolds' smirk faltered. Clayton stood up straighter. Detective Malone stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "I assume you're here for our guest," Malone said, voice measured. Olivia didn't break stride. "I assume you know you've made a mistake." She reached the desk, dropping a thick folder onto the counter. Official seals adorned the cover, the weight of government oversight pressing down on every page. Malone picked it up, his frown deepening as he flipped through it. Whatever was in those files wasn't just paperwork, it was ammunition. "You're overstepping," he said. She gave a thin smile. "I'm stepping exactly where I need to." Within minutes, the cell door swung open. He stepped out, rolling his shoulders as Olivia turned to him. "Time to go," she said simply. Clayton bristled. "This isn't over." He met Clayton's glare with one of his own. "No, it isn't." As he walked out, he could feel the shift in the air. The game had changed, and they had no idea what was coming next. The city looked different at night, especially when you were being hunted. He knew this feeling all too well, weight of unseen eyes. the subtle shift in shadows that weren't just cast by streetlights. As Olivia's car weaved through the streets, his mind pieced together the puzzle that had led to this moment. They planted that evidence, Olivia said, breaking the silence. Her grip on the wheel was steady, but her jaw was tight. That wasn't just a bad traffic stop. They knew exactly who you were. He exhaled slowly. Then it's worse than I thought. She shot him a glance. You need to tell me everything. He considered his words. Trust was a rare currency in his world, and Olivia was one of the few who had earned it. He leaned back in his seat, eyes scanning the dimly lit roads ahead. I was part of an operation, he admitted, a long time ago. It was supposed to be buried. Olivia's hands tightened on the wheel. CIA. He nodded. Deep cover. Black Ops. I got out. Or at least, I thought I did. A heavy silence filled the car. Olivia processed the weight of what he had just revealed. And now they want to erase you. They want to make an example out of me. His voice was low, but controlled. They think I still have something. Information. Leverage. She turned onto a quieter street, heading toward a secure location only she knew. Then we need to find out who's pulling the strings. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize, but the message was clear. You should have stayed buried. He turned the screen toward Olivia. Her expression darkened. We're running out of time. He nodded, his mind sharpening into focus. If they wanted a war, they had just found the wrong soldier to frame. The safe house was dimly lit, tucked away in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of rust and old concrete, but it was secure. For now, Xavier Saturday at the wooden table, staring at the documents Olivia had pulled up on her laptop. Clayton and Reynolds were never just dirty cops, she said, her voice tight. They were part of something much bigger. She turned the screen toward him, and he scanned the classified files. Bank transfers, sealed indictments, hidden case files linked to a covert task force operating outside the law. This wasn't just about him. This was about a network of corruption buried so deep, it had infiltrated every level of law enforcement. He clenched his fists. They weren't just covering their tracks. They were expanding. Olivia nodded, and they needed a scapegoat. You were the perfect target. A sudden knock at the door sent them both into motion. Xavier pulled his gun, nodding at Olivia to check the surveillance monitor. She exhaled sharply. It's not them. The screen showed a man in a dark suit, hands raised. Xavier recognized him instantly. Agent Marcus Steele, one of the few men he still trusted from his CIA days. Let him in, Xavier said, lowering his weapon but staying on edge. Olivia opened the door cautiously, and Marcus stepped inside. I don't have much time, Marcus said, handing Xavier a flash drive. This is everything you need. Names, dates, operations they thought they buried. But you need to act fast. You're not the only one they want to silence. Xavier took the drive, his pulse steady but his mind racing. What's their next move? Marcus hesitated. They're sending someone like you, a cleaner. Xavier felt a cold certainty settle in his bones. He knew what that meant. He wasn't just running from corrupt cops anymore. He was being hunted by the kind of operative that didn't leave loose ends. Then we end this now, he said, standing. No more running, no more hiding. Olivia met his gaze. What's the plan? He slid the flash drive into the laptop. We take this public. We expose everything. But first, we set a trap. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the benches, their cameras flashing, microphones poised. The trial of the decade had just taken a turn no one expected. The prosecution had built its case carefully, painting Xavier as a rogue agent gone bad, but they had no idea what was coming. As Olivia stepped up to the defense table, she set down a thick folder. Your Honor, we have new evidence to present. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. She nodded toward the door. We'd like to call a surprise witness. The door swung open, and Agent Marcus Steele walked in, carrying a briefcase. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room as it took the stand. The DA shifted uncomfortably, sensing control slipping from his grasp. Agent Steele, Olivia said, can you confirm your employment with the CIA? Yes, Marcus replied, and I can also confirm that Special Agent Xavier Cole was working under direct orders when he was framed. Guests filled the room. The judge leaned forward. Are you saying this entire case was fabricated? Marcus nodded. Not just this case. Down scenes of others. Clayton and Reynolds weren't just corrupt officers. They were executing a coordinated effort to silence anyone who got too close to the truth. Olivia clicked a button on her laptop, and a video appeared on the screen. The courtroom watched as the real body cam footage played the unedited version showing Reynolds planting the drugs, Clayton smirking as he made the arrest. The prosecution looked pale. The DA stammered, Your Honor, we need time, to. Enough, a judge interrupted, his voice thunderous. I've seen enough. He turned to Xavier. Agent Cole, you are free to go. This case is dismissed with prejudice. As the gavel struck, Clayton and Reynolds were immediately placed in cuffs, their faces drained of color. The reporters swarmed forward, the courtroom erupting in chaos. Xavier walked out onto the courthouse steps, the sun bright against his skin. Olivia and Marcus stood beside him. The reporters bombarded them with questions. Agent Cole, what happens now? He took a breath. Now, the real work begins. Every case tied to them is being re-examined. The corruption runs deeper than anyone realized. But this is just the start. The cameras flashed. The truth was out. And this time, no one could bury it. Thank you for watching until the very end. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories. Have a wonderful day.